and welcome back to Insemination, the podcast that covers everything infertility industry and donor conception, and we are being inseminated into your commute to work. And I'm so excited to introduce you to our next guest because our next guest has a very unique perspective. They were conceived via traditional surrogacy, so their story is not one that is often talked about. Not only that, but our guest is a passionate advocate who I am so grateful to have in my life. I talk to this person nearly every single day, and I would not have the strength to do the advocacy that I do without being able to text Andi literally almost every single day. So please give a warm welcome to my friend Andi, who I know is going to be your friend at the end of this episode. So thank you for coming on, Andi. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Yeah, I'm excited. Been thinking about this for quite some time.
I think you and I talk almost every day, whether it is through text or through a phone call and stuff like that. Andi is an incredible, passionate, wonderful advocate for the donor conceived community. So we are extremely grateful that we have Andi. But what's incredible specifically about you, Andi, is that your story is so goddamn unique. It is so unique. Very few people who have a shared story who have a story like you don't often come forward, and we need to hear more of it because you were born, you were conceived and born via traditional surrogacy. There is so little research about people who were conceived and born like how you were.
This is true.
So first off, thank you for coming forward. Thank you for being an active member of our community because we desperately fucking need it. So let's start with the number one question. What is traditional surrogacy?
Well, thank you for being a place where we can all gather. I'm so grateful. I have lived on this earth for 36 years, and I only met another donor conceived person in this past year. That was on the same day. I met you and a couple other donor conceived people in New York. It was fantastic. It's a community that I've needed my whole life. I didn't even know.
So yes, I would love to start and explain to everybody what is traditional surrogacy, because I think because I didn't even know there were different kinds of surrogacy. So specifically, what is traditional?
So traditional surrogacy is the first kind of commercial surrogacy where the biological mother is inseminated with the intended father's sperm. So the biological mother serves as an egg donor, you could say. But really, it is just a willing woman who decides that she can act as a, quote, surrogate for another intended couple.
So she is using her own eggs, she is giving one of her eggs, and she is growing and birthing the baby.
Correct.
Okay, just to make sure that we are all on the same page as this. Okay, so keep going.
I didn't know the term traditional surrogacy either growing up. It was not something. I mean, I heard the word surrogate. I heard my parents use the word birth mother. Not really bio mother, but mostly they referred to her by her name. But when I took a class on racism in 2009, and I read a book on eugenics, the final chapter was New Age birth. I contacted that author because I was super stoked to hear somebody use some language that I finally understood. And she was the one who said, when I explained my situation, she said, "Oh, that's traditional surrogacy. That's no longer legal." I was like, "Whoa." So then I had a whole bunch of other questions. I had
Whoa! Yeah. I mean, hold on. That's like a brain fuck right there to let everybody the way I was conceived and born is illegal? That definitely would. I would definitely be like, and we're gonna go stop by the liquor store. Fabulous.
Cheers. Yeah. So
Cheers.
I think I was like 23 at that point. So I got some new vocabulary. And I kind of just went from there. You know, back in 2009, 2010, there wasn't such a thing as the donor conceived community. I started looking into adoption psychology. I got some good information there, but it wasn't quite the same. It's not the same as intentionally being made and purchased.
I hope that this comes across the way that I intend. But there is something about traditional surrogacy that does really not sit right with me, where it is you are creating a child with your own eggs, growing the child, and you've created this child with the intention of selling them.
Yeah. Now, of course,
And
there was never the word selling, and really the money wasn't brought up a lot. This is something that I've had to examine as an adult.
Yeah. That there's a lot to unpack there. I mean, you know, I know that like as donor conceived people, I know also adoptees, we really struggle with feeling like we were products. We were little Build-A-Bears. You know, we were essentially a very expensive blender. So walk me through how this happened. Like, how was the process for your parents, for your biological mother? How do you want me to refer to her? What would be the correct?
Biomom
How do you want me to refer to her?
I like that. I call her my
Biomom.
biological
Fantastic.
Mother. Yeah. It took me a long time.
Fantastic.
And it took until meeting other donor conceived people that I am very confident in saying she's my biological mother. She refers to herself as my surrogate, which is kind of painful to me.
Yeah, I mean, technically there was some surrogacy involved, but she's also your fucking birth mom.
She was my first mother.
That.
Yeah.
And she's your biological mother. That is the accurate descriptor. And I don't want to, like, I've never met her. I don't want to, like, you know, obviously, but it does feel like, oh, excuse me, feels like there's a little avoidance there.
We'll see if we get that far.
So let's also just... But let's take that pause though for other donor conceived people, that it's like you get to refer to your donor however the fuck you want to. You want to call your donor your biological father, your biological mother, your biological parent, your donor, whatever it is, that is for you to choose. Do not let your donor, your parents, society tell you how you have to refer to them. That is your truth. You fucking do what is right for you, all right?
Here, I love it.
That's really how it is. Yeah, I mean, that's how, for me with like the donor conceived community, like how we seem to be, it's like for us, it's like, look, not everyone has to have my mindset on like how I view my donor or anything like that. But all I want is donor conceived people to have the choice and not have society and everybody make the choices for them. But anyway, I might need to keep moving forward. So how did this work out? So is it okay to ask like why they chose to do traditional surrogacy? Like what was the why did they choose that method?
So I'm going to recap as best as I know. I am just saying what I was told. Something I have learned throughout the years, trying to figure out where I stand and how to explain how I came to be. It has to do with narrative. Whose narrative? My adopted mother, who is my recipient parent, who I also just call my mother. I have lots of names for her. Sometimes I call her by her first name if I'm upset with her. She was always the focus growing up. That was who was telling the story. It wasn't until I was an adult that I actually allowed myself to think about myself as a child experiencing being born this way. Because the fertility industry also really focuses on the infertile mother and her experience and fulfilling her what they deem as a deficit, whatever. So back to my original story, my biological father and his wife, who was my adopted mother, met in the 70s, got married in 80. My adopted mother had some issues that resulted in her having a hysterectomy when she was 18 years old. So when she met my biological father, they knew there was no children. and that was okay with my dad. They lived for 6, 7 years together. Um, so obviously there's a lot of trauma in the backstory there. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot I don't know about why that happened and speculation.
Yeah.
But whatever it is, you feel bad for her, right?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, that sounds like there was like certainly a medical trauma, and I don't know, like, was she always
Oh
wanting to
God,
have
she was
kids, and
raised
then that was,
Catholic, and I mean, back in the 60s, 70s, and she really had more of a 50s mentality. Like, women's purpose was being a wife and mother.
so her like this was like
Oh yeah.
identity stripping for her. Okay.
Um, so my dad, though he met her in the Midwest, they moved to California, Southern California, where he was from.
Mm-hmm.
My dad is Jewish. I just have to say that because I do think it does matter as to why they chose to do donor conception. Um,
Mm-hmm.
you know, Holocaust trauma.
Oh, so are you saying that due to the Holocaust, you feel like your dad, it was very important for him to continue on the legacy due to how many lives
Thank
were
you.
lost?
Yes.
Okay,
Compared
I
to
understand, dude. Okay, I
adopting
understand.
someone.
Okay, understand. Okay. Thank you. Okay. Okay, just wanted to clarify. So, keep moving. So, continue
Great.
on with your story.
Okay. So they moved to California in the 80s. I, from doing this little bit of research, found out that the first successful IVF was in 79. I had
Mhm.
assumed that's kind of when surrogacy started. I guess there is this lawyer who started doing surrogacy contracts, but they weren't paid as early as 79. But from what I found
Oh.
out, it seems like the first commercial surrogacy in the United States was 1985, which was the year I was conceived. So I'm first batch.
Whoa. I'm actually surprised that it was 1985. For some reason, I would have assumed that like it had been around a lot longer than that.
There is a woman, so she says she's the first commercial surrogate. She got paid about $11,000. Oh, and she had an interesting name. They gave her a name, the last name Kane from Citizen Kane.
Ew. Why out of any fucking movie to pick from, you pick Kane out of
Apparent,
Citizen
I'm
Kane?
not familiar
I
with the
mean,
story. I'm
at
sorry, I'm not a film.
at least, well, okay, for all of us, like, at least pick Rosebud. For all of us who know Citizen Kane, at least pick Rosebud. Like, Kane? What the fuck? No, Rosebud. That's the obvious choice if you're gonna go with that movie, which is a dumb movie to pick for surrogacy anyway. But fine. Okay, sorry. It's fine. It's fine. I'm going to. It's gonna be fucking weird, dude. Fucking weird. All right. Anyway, okay. So you are one of the
I
first
am one of the first.
in
Okay,
the
I do
first
think
batch.
I'm wrong about that. I think her first was 1980. But still, let's say commercial surrogacy 1980, 1985. Baby M
You're
1985.
still you're still Yeah, you're still
First
part of the
batch.
first batch. I mean, you're a
Great.
part of the first batch.
Yeah.
What's up? Fellow science experiment to another science
I was
experiment.
made in a
You
lab.
know?
I thought that was
Howdy.
a really funny thing to say at parties for a while when I was young.
Oh, me too. Yo, that would be like how I'd hit on boys. Is like speaking of
Yeah,
sperm, hey. And
I'm a
it did
product of
not work.
masturbation. My
Um
parents never had sex.
yeah, I oh god, it's how I really thought I was going to make friends.
I know we have so
Um
much in common. It's pretty funny.
in California, they choose surrogacy. It's very, very new technology. What happens next?
So I did ask them at one point if they got to pick who they chose, or who was chosen for them. It turns out they did not. So that was in regards to like, why didn't you choose a Jewish donor? Since I'm half Jewish, which is a thing. Um, they told me that they couldn't pick. So they were paired with a young woman. She was a young woman. I assume she was 22 maybe when she Yeah, signed up.
Ooh,
She was
okay.
23 when I was born. So she could have even been 21 when she met my parents, who were in their
Yeah.
30s.
Okay.
So they apparently hit it off. They met at like, it wasn't like a Sherry's, but some diner. I have the picture right here. Look at this. I know y'all listening can't see it, but this is a picture of my biological mother and my parents at some diner.
For the people who want to see the photo, there's going to be a full video of this entire episode up on YouTube. So anything that Andi shows us visually, you can also see on the
It looks
YouTube
like
video.
my adopted mom got a sundae.
Amazing. Okay, so they all met, and what happened next?
So the narrative, like people use the same verbiage, like such a nice couple, like, and my bio mom is giving such a gift, the gift of love, the gift of life. I got God's
Mm-hmm.
greatest gift a bunch growing up.
Yeah.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
so bio mom says she didn't need the money, but she was 22 and had a kid. And she apparently worked at a bank. She said she had a good job, but she liked being pregnant. Now I'm getting all of this from a newspaper article that I have. They I think they thought they were doing like a great thing. Everyone did. And I understand that now. Like my parents thought they were helping out a woman who needed it monetarily. I think
Mm-hmm.
they thought we would stay in touch, and we did for a couple years. I'm not really sure what was going on in my bio mom's mind. I think like she said she wanted to be pregnant. I mean, she was 22. Like to me as a 36-year-old, that seems like such a child.
Yeah, I mean the farther the older I get and I get farther away from 22, the more I look at being 22, I'm like, "Oh my god, you're
Yeah.
still a goddamn baby." May I ask what did her family? Did you have any, like, what did her
Oh,
family
the
think of all of
tea,
this?
Laura. So
The tea scalding? Pour spill the tea,
um
Andi.
we were in touch with her for a while. She disappeared. I'll talk about that later. I did find her later. She has a bunch of walls. I, as someone who am sensitive and love ancestry, I have siblings through her. I decided her walls aren't going to stop me from finding out more about this family. So, yes, I did find out through a cousin of hers that her father and her had a huge fight about this. Um, a fight
Whoa.
that was one of the biggest of their lives. And the quote from this cousin, I found this out just this last year, is that the grandfather, my grandfather, maternal grandfather, accused her of shipping off his grandchildren. That was the word. Yeah. Yep.
Yo.
I mean,
Whoa. How? That's a lot of emotions. That's a charged
yep.
statement. How? Okay, couple of questions. One, how does that make you feel to hear that your grandfather, your maternal biological grandfather felt that
Um,
way?
as someone who didn't have information about my family growing up, it's blessed information to have. He's dead now, but I know that before I
Mm,
was even around, he wanted to meet me. He saw me as his grandchild. Um, he seems like a
yeah.
complex person. He also seems really smart. I've heard that he was a singer, uh, and I think that's where I get it from. That I sing. Uh, I think that's my information to have. I think I deserve having that information.
I think you deserve having that. And I do think that it's the layers are because, again, you were conceived in a very unique way. And to find out that a very pivotal person in your biological family's life felt that way is like, whoa. Um, so moving forward, you are your biological mother is growing you. She gives birth to you. What ends up happening
So
next?
I found out as an adult that she held me for 2 hours and then she handed me over to my adopted mom. And I don't know, she told me that to my face, and I didn't, I was getting a lot of information. This is the one time that I've met her as an adult. Um, so I think about that a bit more now. Also, when I met her, I
Mm-hmm.
was 26, so I've had 10 years to think about this. So I think about those two
Yeah.
hours now a lot. I don't think I was breastfed. I
Okay.
know in a strange, weird world, my adopted mother told me she tried to breastfeed me.
I hear so many adoptive parents, so many adoptees talk about how their adoptive
I
parents tried to
I
breastfeed them.
don't like when she told me that. I think I was younger, and even as a young person, I was like, why?
Why? I don't think that's gonna work the
Well,
way you think.
now
La
it's
la
just
la la la.
big sadness for me right there. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, 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 no. Well, did not to force the
No,
conversation
it's
in a
great.
particular way, but you mentioned to me that when you went home with your adoptive mother and biological father, the trauma was already it was already starting. Like it was already happening. And if you feel comfortable, I'd love for you to
Sure.
share that.
This is something that I've felt. It's not really something that's measurable, so that's been hard for me to come forward and admit it, but it's taken me years of adulthood and therapy and introspection to be able to say, yeah, this was a trauma to be taken from my mother. And this doesn't say anything. I'm not trying to say anything about my parents. I love my parents. I do love my adopted mom.
Mm-hmm.
I think even if she was the best mother in the world, this still would have been a trauma to be taken.
Well, and I think because in your particular donor conception story, you are half adopted. I mean, I feel like there's such a Venn diagram between adoptees and donor conceived people, but you really are in the middle of that
Yeah,
Venn diagram. And as we learn and we listen to all of our adoptee advocates and allies, we learn and we know that adoption starts with trauma because it is the automatic separation of family. There's no way to get around that one. It automatically starts with trauma. Now, that doesn't mean that you don't love your adoptive families. That doesn't mean you or anything else, but it does start with trauma. This started with
agreed.
trauma as
It
well.
really did. And I think whether it was willful ignorance, whether they were told um, otherwise, like I feel like that trauma, it was just ignored throughout my life. Like it wasn't supposed to be there
Mm.
because I think I was thought of as some clean slate, like some, really nice baby they got fresh out of the womb.
Yeah, because we're not taking infant trauma
Not at all.
seriously whatsoever. I mean, yeah, I mean, I feel like people who are within the donor conception, surrogacy, or adoptee world, we go, oh no, it's a real thing. But yeah, no, and the trauma was there. I mean, this was your birth mother, your biological mother. That was all you heard, you smelled, you grew. She held you for 2 hours, and then
Sayonara. Even even if it was
sayonara.
agreed, and even if she knew from stage one that this would happen, and she set up emotional preparation for herself, there was no way I could do that as
Mm-hmm.
an infant.
And as a donor conceived person, that's always something that I'm saying, that it's like, the children of donor conception, we got no say. But like I feel like in your case, it's like it just we're dialing that volume up a lot.
And then I'm supposed to be grateful
So then
because since I'm
yes,
half
isn't that
adopted, I always felt bad. Like, well, I didn't come from a traumatic background. I was purposely made to have a privileged life. Like, so I felt awful. Like, how dare I miss my mom?
Oh my God. When do you think that like you were first able to verbalize that you missed your
Not
mom?
until I met other
When
donor
do you think
conceived
that
people.
So, wow. Okay, so but now looking back on it, you're like, "Oh shit, that's what I was
Yeah, I
feeling
mean,
that
I
entire
always
time."
knew, but it wasn't 100% until I met egg donor conceived people. I needed people to be like, yeah, I do have a connection with this person whose DNA I carry.
Looking back, I mean, I hate to say it so like black and white. I don't know how. I'm trying to figure out a more nuanced way, but like, I guess what was your childhood like? Was it more or less a happy childhood, or were there? Do you have
I
notes?
got notes. I got notes, and
You got
I
notes.
got
Okay.
over a decade of therapy under my belt.
I mean, I love a person in therapy. I love a self-aware person who's like, girl, I need some therapy. I love that. So was there anything about your childhood that you have notes on that you think was directly correlated to the surrogacy?
Well, let's start with when I got brought home. I wouldn't eat. I wouldn't eat
Whoa.
for 2 weeks, and my adopted mother was told I was failure to thrive. You okay?
Oh, it was the wrong time to try and drink water. Oh my God.
I love that I laugh about this life all the time. Like, you really have to. Like, it's just so. They're like, oh, this child is failure to thrive. I wonder why.
I wonder why. I feel like, but I mean, I get so much shit on the internet because they're like, I don't know, maybe I would take you more seriously about your donor conception issues if you didn't run around the Capitol in a sperm costume. And I'm like, listen, Becky, okay? Listen. I've only gotten people to fucking listen to me because I'm wearing a goddamn sperm suit, okay? That's the only reason why. And I'm like, because you have to laugh at this shit. At least in my perspective, if you don't want to, that's totally your prerogative. But in my experience, how I deal with this bullshit is I gotta laugh at it. Sorry, that's my toxic trait. I don't know. I'm trying to do therapy and shit. I do the therapy. I do the medication. I have an anxiety disorder. Thank you very much. Let me go make my money.
You're doing great.
Anyway, so yes. Thank you. Anyway, okay, so failure to thrive. What a beautiful note to end on. Okay, anyway, failure to thrive. Amazing.
I kept crying.
Please keep going.
Yeah,
I'm sure this is gonna.
I haven't asked my parents if they, like, I don't know what they thought about what they did at that point. If they're like, oh, this is bad.
I mean,
maybe I made a mistake.
Yeah, I mean, I'm curious to like ask them, like, do you think any of those problems with her infancy maybe had something to do with the beforehand?
Very
like,
curious enough.
Or is it total but is it cognitive
is.
dissonance?
They have.
Yeah.
It's amazing to me constantly how little they understand about psychology.
Or just, I don't know. I mean, not to speak ill of your parents, but just, context clues. Yeah. This isn't like, I'm not like, we're not all therapists and psychologists, but this is just basic context clues.
Let's just say they had their own issues that were kind of taking precedent at the moment.
All right. Well, cheers
oh my God,
to
I think I gotta pour a little bit more. This is getting fun. Okay. So they're doing their best.
All right.
My adopted mom always wanted to be a mom. I think a lot of the therapy, let's say more than half of the therapy had to do with being raised Catholic. Not necessarily donor conception. It's hard to separate those things, but
What's your confirmation name? Dorothy. Ooh, I am unfamiliar with Saint Dorothy.
I don't really know. I was confirmed when I was 8 because my adopted mom told me I could choose between Catholicism or Judaism, but then we moved to a rural town and there wasn't a temple, and I wanted her to like me, so I decided Catholicism.
Okay. Can we just state the red flag when you're like, I
We
wanted my
really,
mom
really
to like
tried
me?
hard.
That's a bit of a red flag. That shouldn't be something a child should have to think of going, I really hope my mom likes me. Can we just say that right now to anybody who's listening, that if you are having that thought, please, that's not on you, babies. That's not on you. If your parents are making you feel that way, that is not a you thing. That is a them
Thank
thing.
you.
Anyway, that done with my PSA. All right. So, we have okay, Catholicism trauma, love it, amazing.
I
I'm right
know.
there with you. You
Who in
know,
the United States are
lather,
half
rinse,
Jews
repeat.
who were Catholic altar servers? Stand up. Right here.
Right here. What's up? How you doing?
Donor
Fuck
conceived,
yes.
half Catholic.
Donor
Altar
conceived, half
servers.
Jewish, altar servers, and I was that little asshole theater kid, so that like whenever like they did the communion and they turned the communion into the Eucharist,
Oh,
I
it
rang
was
those
all
bells
about the
so
bells.
fucking loud
I
that
just had to be the
it was
bell
all.
ringer.
And I didn't understand like how these goddamn like fucking punk altar servers would be like, I'm like, no, you ring those bells so loud that Jesus can hear you. What the fuck is wrong with you? I took my choreography very seriously. Ugh. I loved it. There were props and choreography. I was like, amazing. I was like, it was just something to do during church, yo.
Exactly.
It was boring as fuck. Then I was like, yo, at least I got some shit to do now. I have a job. And I took it seriously.
And sometimes I got to play with fire.
Okay. Sometimes you got to play with fire. Fuck yes. Fire. All right. Anyway, okay, so moving forward, I
got a lot of
Okay,
trauma
so
stories as a kid. I'm not sure which ones exactly are relevant, but something that is relevant, and I was told by my parents that it was very rare, that my parents paid the same traditional surrogate for my little sister. So I have a full blood, I don't like that term, but like a full DNA sister who was raised with me. She is 4.5 years younger than me. So my biological mother had her first child with her husband, who is my older half sister. Then she had me for my parents. Then she had a son, and then she had my sister for my parents.
Whoa. Okay. Now, may I know that like your sister isn't here to express her story, but is it okay to ask if your sister shares similar sentiments to you about all of this?
My sister and I are different people. We're close. She has a lot of friends, whereas I am that theater kid who was the altar server.
Okay. Yeah. Enough said. Enough. Okay.
So
all right.
I tell her every step of the way what I'm doing. And actually, we might go meet our half sister in a couple weeks when we go to LA together. And this will be the first time she meets her. Yeah. So she's interested. She just isn't interested to the same level I am. I also think.
Okay. Does not have the hyper focus you and I have.
That's the word. I also think it is potentially different for her having an older maternal figure that I was. I saw myself as a maternal figure to her, kind of like a protector from our adopted mom, I have to say. Hopefully you won't hear that. Sorry, Mom, if you do.
Well, since we're already there, and I apologize, adoptive mother. But hey, we're here. This is the reality. We got to be honest. If we're gonna fix the future, we got to be honest. Is it okay to ask what were ways in how your adoptive mother treated you that, let's just say, you have notes on?
I am a very sensitive soul, and my adopted mother is not like that. She is in your face, and I don't know. She was from a German family from the Midwest. She was one of 5 kids. I don't think she understood how sensitive I was. I was told a lot I was too sensitive. I was very sensitive. But I was scared of her. I was scared of her emotional reactions. She also was on a lot of hormones. Like they pumped her full of
Mm,
hormones. I don't know. I
yeah.
blamed her a lot growing up, and I've really softened to that growing up over the years, and also being a mother
Is
myself.
it,
Yeah,
yeah. Is it okay to ask, like, what is your
it's
relationship like now?
extremely superficial. I
Mm,
especially after my teenage years. I mean, you heard what I said earlier. Like, I just wanted her to like me. I tried to be the best kid I
red
ever
flag, red
could.
flag, red
All,
flag.
I would cry if I got a B plus, that type of kid. And
Oh.
I think she really encouraged that. Like, she really wanted me to be,
Mm.
I don't know.
So, talking more about surrogacy, you were born and conceived via traditional surrogacy, which is no longer legal. So, we now have gestational
Yeah,
surrogacy.
it's not as clean cut as this amazing woman who I adore, Dorothy Roberts, said. Um, it isn't just outright illegal. So there's actually not any federal laws about surrogacy. It's all state by state. Um, even
Oh, okay.
surrogacy friendly states, which there are 10, most don't want to do traditional surrogacy. If you look online to different websites, they all say it's because of the potential legal and emotional risk of
I mean, I can
it.
understand that. I mean, it does seem like traditional surrogacy leaves some pretty big gaping holes for human nature to be like,
Well,
"Hello,
and
how are
the
we doing
history
here?"
of surrogacy shows that those examples happened. So people who are older probably remember cases like Baby M, which happened. Baby M was born a few months before me in New Jersey, and the traditional surrogate, when Baby M was born, decided she wanted to keep the baby. And it went to New Jersey Supreme Court. Ultimately, it was a big deal, and lots of people were talking about surrogacy at that time. And that is when
Mm.
my bio mom and my parents went on several talk shows, and there were some newspaper articles, and I myself was on some talk show as a baby. Yeah, just drooling all over the place.
Ugh. All right. How do you view surrogacy now as somebody? Because you one are were conceived, birth via surrogacy. You yourself are a mom now. You are in your 30s, so and you have done therapy. So like there's been a lot of work that you have done. You had some life experience. How do you view surrogacy now?
I am a queer person, and I support non traditional families. But as a donor conceived person, it is mind boggling that we haven't put donor conceived people at the forefront of this industry yet. I guess that's what we're doing right now. But it seems like a no brainer to me. Um, I think it's really sad um, looking at this industry. I feel like I have been forgotten. Um, I feel like I'm constantly having to prove my trauma, which I don't think I should have to.
Mm.
Um, I think donor conceived people need to be heard. That's what I think before anyone
Mm-hmm.
chooses to do donor conception.
I'm going to sort of read in between the lines, and I want you
Great.
to correct me. So, what I'm getting is that your views are not necessarily hard in stone, but you just want people who are the products, who do have to live with the
Emotional toll of being born this way.
emotional toll, whether that is donor conceived, surrogacy, we need to be listening to
100%.
those people. And then from there, take
Yes.
our cues from them. Is that, I don't want to like step on, I'm just sort of, I'm saying this
Yeah.
because you and I talk a lot, so that's
I
why I'm like,
think
I think
that's
I
informed
understand where
consent.
you're going.
I think
Okay.
parents don't know what they're doing. I think donors don't know
Mm,
entirely what they're getting themselves into. And I think it's
yeah.
been intentional. At this point, the fertility industry's been going on for so long, it seems intentional.
I do. I mean, I would have to very much agree. I mean, something, it frustrates me how the industry, or I'm going to say other groups, I'm going to leave it really vague right now because I don't want to get other advocates in trouble. I'm going to say other groups who do have who have a say, who do have an influence on the industry, the fact that they do not value the voices of the donor conceived because, in their own words, we're too close and biased to it. It's like, no shit, Sherlock. No shit, I'm biased because I'm it. Because I'm fucking it, asshole. And the fact that we do not, and the fact that they actively value the recipient parent's voice over ours is like, and I'm not saying don't value that voice. Of course, value that voice, but value the but value the donor conceived person's life and voice first. That is what actually makes sense, because it's like the fact that there's never been long-term studies on the
I was
effects of
just
donor
about to say
conception,
that.
whether
Yep,
it is
it is
physical or
so
mental.
telling.
Yeah.
You look up surrogacy right now on Wikipedia, the studies they end at age 10. They say
Ooh.
surrogate created people are fine. We've
Ooh.
studied them to age 10. Where are the studies on
Okay.
surrogate created adults?
Okay, so that's our second red flag. We're just keeping that. So I wanted my mom to like me, and surrogacy studies go to age 10. Two red flags. All right. So we're just for everyone keeping track here. All right. Yeah, no, the fact that they're actively not studying children born via surrogacy, donor conceived people like long term as adults, they're actively
They're
avoiding it.
actively discrediting our
Is
voices.
And I do think, and again, especially somebody like you, because you, as I said, you are so in the middle of a bunch of Venn diagrams, that I think like a voice like yours in particular needs to be heard. But I would love to talk about also so let's talk about a little bit of a lighter note about your
All right.
healing, because you've been actively working about healing. And so you said like meeting donor conceived people, and you are part of an egg donor conceived
Oh man,
support group.
I love the good eggs.
How has that been, like talking to other egg donor conceived people?
It's been a big marker in my life of before and after.
Mhm.
Um, there was a process of meeting people and being fearful at first. There's a process of
Mhm.
acceptance, and then recognizing people and people who've had similar stories. It's a first in my life, you know, being able to tell my story and have someone get it. Growing up, when I would
Mhm.
say I had two moms and I had a birth mother, the reaction I most got was no reaction. I got blank stares because there was no
Mm.
comprehension to that. And that's in some ways better than like bad reactions, but it still was a negative reaction for me. Getting people like to hear me who get it means so much to me.
Mhm. I mean, listening to other people who've had a similar lived experience, and they all go, "Oh shit, I feel the same way," or is like, "Does anyone else feel this way?" And the entire room goes, "Yeah." Incredibly
It's so
validating.
meaningful.
Now,
Also, in this group, we've been gathering eggs. I think we're at like 7 or 8 adult egg donor conceived people, which is incredible because um, gestational surrogacy and egg donation really just started in the 90s. Um, and
mm,
helping these young people, because they are significantly younger than me, find their biological family and explore these feelings, is something like I'm so grateful for that. That is the best thing, and it feels like something
mhm.
I I needed to do with my life. I love them. I love you all, eggs.
For all of our lovely eggs, the good eggs
Yeah.
that are hearing us right now. Because I want to make sure, in case I have anybody on here who was conceived and born via gestational surrogacy is hearing your story and goes like, man, I relate to a lot what she's saying, but she was born traditional surrogacy. That's it. I don't feel justified in connecting or feeling those feelings. And they're listening to you right now. What would you say to them?
I would say your feelings are more than justified. Your ancestors are in your body and they love you. Um, you have every right to know where you came from. Um, and even if it's scary, even if, you know, whatever you call them, your donor, your biological parent, your DNA giver, even if that's not there as a possibility for a relationship for you, there's so many other relationships that you deserve because that is your biological family. And it is up to each donor conceived person. Like, I know people who aren't interested, but if you are interested, nothing should stop you from knowing these parts of you. That's the hardest thing for me. It wasn't not being raised with my siblings, which is terrible. It's not, all the trauma that I think came from being mixed up with donor conception. It was the loss of the culture that is my biological mother's.
Mm.
Like, there was so much that I missed out on, and that's not fair.
I talk a lot in my TikTok and my Instagram about the practicalities of donor conception. I very rarely do talk about the emotion because people do not like me talking about that. But fuck it. We're doing it on the podcast. I
haven't cried yet.
All right, try and stop me. But no, we don't talk about the emotional aspect of it. And the part of it is it's unknown territory. It's unknown, and I'm talking about it for the donor,
Absolutely.
The recipient parent, and the donor-conceived child, all the siblings, whether they're the donor's children, everything, all of we just kind of file it in a place of like, oh, it won't be a problem. It won't be an issue. And I'm like, this is so complex. And we are just making all of these assumptions that everyone's going to be okay, everyone's going to fit into a nice little neat box, and we're going to be fine. And the one thing that I can say with certainty, with talking to the amount of donor-conceived people, donors, recipient parents that I have spoken to, is none of it fits into a neat little box. None of it does. And to the recipient parents who are listening, who are like, my kid's fine, they're good, they don't have any questions, they're not curious. And I'm like, one, they actually might be. They just know they can't talk to you yet. They're scared to. Now, that's not to say that you are a scary parent. That's not to say that you're a bad parent. But they have this instinct in them that goes, if I show any kind of curiosity, I'm going to hurt mom. Exactly. I'm going to hurt dad. And they're not going to actually, and here's the fun part, guys. The amount of donor-conceived people who we talk to on a daily basis, and they found out accidentally that they're donor-conceived, and their parents don't even know yet that they know. Like, that is a lot of people that I just know. So for my recipient parents out there, you have to take extra effort to make a safe space. It's not just like, oh no, they know that they can talk to me. No, that's not. I love you, and I love that you feel that way, but you got to take it to an extra step. You have to be actively telling your child, it is okay to do this. It is okay to talk to me about this. If you are curious, you want to do this, you want to do that, we got your fucking back. We've got this for you. You have to actively show that it is a safe space. And remember, what they say at 10 could be very different than what they say at 20 or 30. And you got to be ready for that switch, because that's what we have seen continually is we see a lot of donor-conceived people kind of like essentially like put themselves in their own little donor-conceived fog And they sort of go through that until they hit adulthood. And then once they hit adulthood, they're like, oh shit, I need to figure this out. And the worst is when those donor conceived people start doing the research and they start exploring without the recipient parent. That is when you know you've got a goddamn problem on your hand.
I see on TikTok and online, like, people talk about donor babies and test tube babies. And I myself used to refer to myself as a test tube baby. But I think
we all did.
It's time that the consciousness is raised, America wakes up and realizes that we have a whole generation of donor conceived adults. We have a whole community, and we got a wave of young people coming who were created this way. And it's time that we be seen as a population, and as people who deserve human rights.
Well, and I think that you and I really actually got to see, I think, a little bit into the beast. So many people know that I attended some of the ASRM conference, which is the American Society of Reproductive Medicine. They are the ones who essentially constitute the guidelines for all of the banks and clinics to fall within the United States. Now, again, those are guidelines, not actual regulations and laws. So clinics and banks do not have to follow them. So what ASRM is essentially a giant dog and pony show. Sorry, guys, but like, I don't know what else you want me to say. But until you really all start stepping up and actually really helping out donor conceived people, that's how I'm just going to continue to refer to you guys. But there was a social media conference there, which I and Andi both got to attend, and we watched it. And no donor conceived person spoke at this conference. It was all recipient parents. It was infertility doctors, all OBGYNs, going up and talking about spreading their
and attracting
message.
Young egg and sperm was the quote that I heard that made my skin crawl.
And Andi and I were just standing there, and
you
just
seen
like
Laura's
our
face.
skin. I was livid. Well, because at that point, like, there are so many goddamn cryobanks on TikTok actively trying to recruit or poach. Let's just be honest.
And they're poaching donors. Teenagers. They're reaching underage
and they're poaching fucking teenagers. It was interesting because you and I both talked to a couple of recipient parents there, and it was interesting to see different reactions. Like, one recipient mom who was there was very nice, and I was like, hey, how do you feel? I'm like, I'm donor conceived. Thank you so much for being here and everything. And I was like, how do you feel for the fact that no donor conceived person was asked to speak at the ASRM conference? And she looked at me and she was like, wait, what? And I was like, yeah. And she was like, are you fucking kidding me? Are you serious? They didn't ask? I'm like, no. And she was like, that's insane. And you could tell she was genuinely shocked by this. That was something that was very shocking to her. Now, a different recipient parent we talked to was like, why would you talk at this? Why would you? Like, what does this have to, like, how would this help you out at all? And I'm like, you're a recipient parent and you don't understand that? That's a little terrifying.
I don't think our parents understood that. I think maybe if they understood how it would affect their child, maybe they wouldn't have chose donor conception. Or maybe they would have gone about it differently.
I certainly think going about it differently would have probably been a big piece of it, certainly for me. But yeah, but you and I saw what was kind of going on, and I think both you and I were like, we have to act now.
What I'm seeing on TikTok, because all these banks that are trying to recruit their young egg and sperm, as they call it, and I see price tags. They're saying, come and earn 30,000, or can you believe that I paid off my student loans, or whatever. I saw some woman comment about how she paid off her car. I was sold for $12,000. Like, that price tag sucks. That follows me for the rest of my life. And I don't think people who participated in this in the 80s and who are participating in egg selling now get that.
And, like, let's be honest. Let's call it what it is. It is egg and sperm selling. You are not a donor. You're in the United States, because other countries don't actually pay donors. But in the United States,
and that's
you're not
pure
a donor.
propaganda,
you're a seller.
Because selling your body parts is illegal.
We have to start actually calling it what it is. We have to stop calling it donations. There's not that you're not donating a fucking thing. You specifically are doing it to buy a Louis
Especially if
Vuitton
the
bag.
advertising
You're buying
is
it.
specifically saying this is, make money. That's who you're attracting, people who want to make money. Don't call it something else then. Yeah. Oh, now we're getting heated.
So with that, if you've got donor-conceived people out there, recipient parents, donors, anything that you would want them to know.
I want them to know that I'm really grateful for Laura High doing what she's doing. I saw you across the United States a couple months ago and was like, oh, she's going to be my friend. And I have worked hard. I hope you trust me now.
I talk to you fucking every day.
I am so lucky. I
talk to you every
for a
fucking
friend
day.
like you my whole life. You're smart and you got a heart of gold, and I'm really grateful for this platform because I have been waiting a very long time for someone to hear my story. So thank you to everyone who has listened. I'm still trying to find other traditional surrogates. I thought there were thousands of us, but I think there's a lot less than I actually thought, from what I'm figuring out. There are thousands of us, but not tens of thousands. So I have just so far found one other in the United States. So come find me. I'm at Traditional Surrogate on Instagram. I'd love to see you there.
If you were born via traditional surrogacy, please go contact Andi. And I don't want to speak for you, but I'm assuming also if you were born via gestational surrogacy and you just need some help and guidance.
Yeah, we got a lot of different people in our egg donation group. We have a double donor conceived person now. We would love to see you. We're a great chill group and we just support each other through our daily life because donor conception is something you deal with daily.
But if anybody is interested in joining any of the donor conceived support groups that Andi is referring to, you can find them on Instagram at DCC support. If you need that support, which I hella suggest you get, go join that. Go get the support. Go talk to your peers. I promise those feelings, donor conceived people who are feeling this, those little feelings that you've got in the back of your head that you have not allowed yourself to think of, that you are like, no, I'm not going to feel it. No. I promise you start joining these support groups and you start getting some validation and you start realizing every single one of these people has been feeling the same things that I have my entire life. You actually are going to start healing.
Yeah.
Do it. Do it, my friends.
It.
Do it, my little pumpkins. Okay? Amazing. Well, Andi, it is always phenomenal to chat with you. Thank you for coming on. Thank you for sharing your story. Because again, it's so unique. It's gotta be heard. Your story has to be fucking heard. And I really, really do hope that we start taking people who were born via surrogacy, donor conceived people, feelings into actual consideration. Actual studies are done because that's the only way how we're actually going to improve this is we need that data. So thank you for raising your voice. Thank you for being an advocate, and we will continue to march on.
It's an honor. Thank you.
Have a lovely, lovely day. Thank you all so much for listening to another episode of Insemination, and thank you, Andi, for being as vulnerable and open and sharing your story because, oh my God, we need to hear more stories like that. Spotlighting those kinds of stories is what leads to actual fundamental change and empathy and understanding for people who are conceived in their kind of situation. And I just want to remind everybody to listen to the people who have the lived experience, especially when it relates to anything involving human rights. The only way we will ever make fundamental change is to listen and to have empathy and compassion. So thank you, Andi, and thank you again to all of our listeners for tuning in again and turning on Insemination. We'll see you back next week. Please leave a review, a comment, follow me on all of your social media at Laura High Five. And remember, we don't just have the audio of this episode, we also have it on my YouTube, Laura High. We'll see you next time.